I had lunch once with a former CEO of one of the big banks. He started shaking his head and he said, "You know, John, it's just too big. I can't go there." I didn't seem to be able to elicit the reaction in them that I had in myself, which was put your pencil down, stop, and rethink everything.
It all seemed obvious to me. I had no doubts, and I don't now. But I had no idea that what I was talking about was something revolutionary. All I knew was it was something everybody seemed to disagree with. But I was right all the time.
It changed the way I thought about everything else.
An idea that extends from the microscopic to the cosmic. The magic is that it never ends.
It definitely made me feel like this is going to change the world.
We have this entire misunderstanding of what Darwin really meant when he said survival of the fittest.
It's this incredible juggling act of the same materials over and over and over again.
Everything is interrelated to each other, it's self-balancing, and we are screwing up the balance.
We need to reimagine our place in the universe.
I don't tend to think too much of the past, perhaps because I can remember it so clearly. I don't have to think about it. It's like turning the pages of a book. Memories are like that. If you go right back to the beginning, I estimate that I was conceived on Armistice Day, World War I. November the 11th, 1918. My mother was rather upset about me making an appearance in her womb because she had a quite good job. So she shunted me to my grandmother to raise me. My father, who worked in Brixton, South London, I only saw occasionally. He was a wonderful teacher in many ways. For my Christmas present one year, he gave me by far the best present. What he called a box of tricks, which was bits of wire and bells and lights. He said, "There you are, try joining up those things, see what you can make." I was 4 years old, and there was something about the feel of things like this that inspired me in many ways. I think this happens to most children. I think children will get turned on to music or painting or something like that by being given something round about that age and a chance to concentrate.
I must have been 10 or 11 years old. And I had heard about microscopes and I was interested in it. My dad went to Edmond Scientific in Barrington, New Jersey. He got me slides and the slide covers and test tubes. And he got me a really good microscope. He got me a professional microscope. He asked the guy who made the signs at work. He got one that said Janine Benyus, microscopist. You might as well have said astronaut, because every time I sat down, I was traveling to another world, right? And he got me this book called Hunting with a Microscope. It's full of all these black and white drawings of these exotic creatures. You know, they looked like science fiction dragons to me. We got some pond water. I looked at it that night in the microscope, and sure enough, there were all these creatures that I had seen. And it blew my mind. It just blew my mind. It changed the way I thought about everything else.
The happiest memory I have was something that I always look forward to every Saturday. On Saturday night, we would go to my grandpa's house. My grandpa would put on like a fall suit, three-piece suit. He's very elegant in terms of the way he walks, the way he dresses. And then we will walk to the night market and we will have 4 or 5 different type of dishes. I still remember very clearly that every stall, there's always like 2 buckets. Like there's one bucket of used utensils and used bowls and cups, and the other bowl is the clean one. I never thought twice about that system. But when I went to the States, wow. At first, it's actually quite amazing. You go to any fast food restaurants, everything is like layers and layers of packaging. Everything is plastic, from the straw, the lid, even the cups, all the way to all the wrappers, tomato sauce. At the end, I always try to return those ketchups back to the counter. And then they say, no, 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 just dump it. Whole tray straight into the trash bin. For me, the shock was like, this is how rich people, wealthy people, developed nations consume. In a way, in the beginning, really, you actually think it's actually quite cool.
When you asked me about the beginning of my career on Wall Street, I was very proud to be accepted into this fraternity of elitism. I went to Brooks Brothers and bought my suits and polished my shoes. There I was, all proud and as a peacock. It was exciting times, flying around the world first class. I was in Tokyo and London, and they paid you a lot. There was some real bad behavior. We got carried away more than we should have, for sure. But it was success that is like a drug. It was crazy. I was the second youngest managing director of JP Morgan. You know, life was great. It was nothing but fun and excitement and ego gratification. And, you know, what could go wrong?
I was a little scientist in training. I began to really notice the rhythms, the cycles, and the patterns in the natural world. And I would be out there all day long. It was like wind in the willows. I remember the moment when all that changed. It was spring, I was 12, and things were not quite right. Everywhere I looked, I started to see these flags. And then I found another one and another one. They were starting at one end and scraping the field. So that summer, I watched them replace this incredibly competent, beautiful, complex system, living system.
People move out from the crowded cities to build homes and raise their families.
With streets and driveways and roads.
One subdivision after another leapfrogs across the landscape, competing for valuable land space. Man, with his modern machines, is consuming land at a frightening rate. About 3,000 acres are cleared every day to make room for the growing ranks of suburban dwellers.
Living in the modern world is a pretty interesting experience right now. Filled with excitement, innovations, and opportunities that my parents never could have imagined when they were growing up. It's like many things, it's a paradox. It's both great and terrifying. I wonder what it would look like if we were removed from the day-to-day and sort of sitting out in a spaceship looking down at humans on Earth. In many ways, we're all trapped in this system where we're hustling for more money to buy more stuff that we know doesn't give us happiness in order to impress people, that many of which we really don't even like. And, you know, it's kind of insane. But if you go out on the street, everything seems fine. It's hard to imagine that there's something fundamentally wrong.
Ah, thank you. Life somehow always put me in places where there were interesting questions to answer or things to invent. And then, having invented them, I could then use them and try and find out answers to other problems. Like, for example, when I invented the ECD, the electron capture detector.
This device is quite exceptionally sensitive, more so even than an animal's nose, and that's quite remarkable, for it's not often that one can do better than nature.
It wasn't long before it was used to find the presence of tiny amounts of pesticides and other poisonous substances in the environment. Like the CFCs, which were in every spray can everywhere and were building up in the atmosphere hugely.
A little-known chemical that depletes the ozone layer is found in hundreds of household products.
Lots of things that we throw away, like the gas in the spray can, it goes into the atmosphere and does all sorts of things thereafter.
The chemical is one of several pollutants believed to be damaging the protective blanket in the atmosphere that shields the Earth from ultraviolet radiation.
Develop a great reputation, get hired to run the World Bank to save the world, and retire as a proud citizen. That was sort of a model of a career path that appealed very much to me.
For everyone's safety, please keep the aisles clear. Right now, sit back and relax and enjoy the flight.
There I was sitting in Singapore Air, first class, and it was Father's Day, and I was thinking about my kids. I looked down and there was an article that talked about the low-income housing system and how corrupt and mismanaged it was. That spoke to me about all these problems in the world. And on the left-hand column, there was an article about a media executive.
Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be encountering a bit of turbulence.
And he had decided to give away virtually all of his fortune. It was something like $350 million.
Will passengers please return to their seats and fasten their seat belts? We should be back on track now and heading for our scheduled landing. Cabin crew, take their seats and secure.
It's almost like being the naive recruit who signed up for the military and was sent to Vietnam and then realized mid-battle that this fight wasn't about what I thought it was about, and what the hell am I doing here? It felt like a message about, you know, life is not just meant to go on as it was, and this is a turning point that's more profound than you realize, so wake up.
Every human has the same desire. We're all tempted by it. Deep inside, there is a constant urge to own more. Yeah. I was in the United States until I was like 25. During this time, consumer cultures become all-time boom. Once you come back to Taiwan, you don't see any differentiations. Now Taiwan is the same as the West. In this consumption culture, everywhere in the world has now almost like a standard template of a success. Same type of watch you need to wear, same type of car you need to drive, same type of apartment you should have. But that's what consumer culture is about. This beauty is deceptive. What are these lights doing? It's creating this ambience for us to admire this cluster of buildings in the middle of a city. This is basically a psychological symbol of progress, growth. We get overhyped up about this sense of achievement, right? You're getting higher, taller, brighter, more colorful. Unfortunately, this glittering beauty, behind it, it's just lots of frivolous consumption. And some of that is very much against what nature wants or what the environment needs us to do. We can really look at the world in two ways. There is a biosphere, which is Earth and all living beings, but there is new ecosystem that human built for themselves. This man-made technosphere is everything on Earth that is not natural. This infrastructure that we build, roads, networks, informations, is not in balance with the natural ecosystem. We have to rethink that. It's okay to build these things, but we have to do it in a smart way.
Lying on my desk was a letter from the Director of Spaceflight Operations of NASA asking would I join in with them in their lunar and planetary exploration program. The idea of actually being asked to join in was extraordinary. And it was all a consequence of that electron capture detector.
Here in the rusty valleys of Mars, autumn is almost over in the northern hemisphere.
What NASA wanted was a tiny little instrument that was small enough that their rockets could take to Mars or the Moon or whatnot and do an analysis of the surface and see if it was fit for life.
With the entire world as our witness, the countdown begins at Cape Canaveral, Florida, for one of man's greatest adventures.
I was told I'd got until Friday, at the end of the week, to find a way of finding life on Mars or any other planet comes about. I put my foot in it and said I thought they hadn't a hope in hell of finding anything. Which, of course, they didn't. It wasn't until you started asking questions about Mars and thinking about its atmosphere that you suddenly start looking at the bits of the Earth, like the atmosphere and the oceans, in a totally different light. The sums didn't add up. For example, the 20% of oxygen in the atmosphere, 21%, is utterly anomalous. It just doesn't belong there. There should be less than a part per million of oxygen. How does it stay constant? Not just year by year, but for millions of years. Then it dawned on me, if all those gases are made by life, life must be regulating it. The Earth had to be the complex system that regulates itself so as to keep a life-favorable state constantly. The whole system is interconnected in ways that you can't imagine. And it's been doing it for a remarkable over 3 billion years. It all seemed obvious to me. I had no idea that what I was talking about was something revolutionary.
Even on this little drop of pond water, there's so much life. When I look at these organisms living in this little pond under my microscope, I realize that they're eating, excreting, and the thing that it creates becomes the raw material for the next organism. It's a system that creates everything it needs and it doesn't waste anything. And Lovelock saw that at the planetary level. He saw that those small cycles created this large cycle, releasing what was needed into the atmosphere in incredibly tuned amounts to create conditions conducive to life. That's an amazing systemic miracle when you think about it. You know, it really is.
A near neighbour of mine was William Golding, the author, you know, Lord of the Flies and all that. And he was very interested. And he said, well, if you're going to have a big theory like that, you better give it a good name after the Greek goddess for the Earth. I suggest you call it Gaia.
Mr. James Lovelock is the pioneer to make us realize that the whole Earth is actually one cohesive system. Everything is interrelated to each other, it's self-balancing, and we are screwing up the balance.
The first 5 years after I left Wall Street, at least, I would say, were primarily spent searching. I began questioning the core premises of how the economy operates, the unquestioned assumptions. Exponential economic growth, money equals wealth, wealth equals power. It really pushed me into a hunger for learning like I'd never experienced. I was introduced to James Lovelock's work. The idea that the entire planet is a living system with cycles that interconnect in ways that are probably beyond our understanding. But it's a paradigm-shifting idea that clearly has implications for economics and finance as well as everything else. It gave me permission to believe that what I was thinking wasn't crazy. In the 21st century, the way the system of the world works is linear. We think of the economy as a machine where we push natural and human resources together in such a way that we spit out products that consumers buy and then end up on a waste heap. Did you know the word consumer literally means to destroy? What in nature is just a consumer? Everything gives back, except us. It works marvelously well when the economy is relatively small. It works to go into the forest and chop down a tree once every 3 years to burn in your fire. But if you continue to chop down more and more trees, eventually you don't have any trees. So scale matters. We're at the moment in time where the scale is butting up against the limits of the finite planet. And we will either really get it wrong and cause irreparable damage, or remember that we're a member of a bigger system. And, you know, this is something that we used to know and we've forgotten in our quest for modernity.
When I was studying architecture in Cornell, we have a privilege of being in Rome to study for a semester or a year. I was here with one of my favorite professors teaching us about archaeology. We are in Augustus Forum. The Forum is actually offices. Next to it is a market, literally like a shopping mall where different goods are being traded. It's very interesting when you see these walls when they are open, especially when they're in ruin form. You get the stone on the outside, and then you got a brick layer, and in the middle, literally, you have everything that's like discarded inside the wall. You can see like there's part of a roof, some sort of tiles, clay pipes, any type of like leftover bricks or leftover materials is being poured into this middle cavity. On top of that, the decorative marble. They are actually very expensive wallpaper, okay, on top of a pile of crap. For me, as a student, it was a very eye-opening moment. Any buildings you open up, the walls is full of trash. They are actually taking down their old house and putting it into their new house. They're reusing their stones, they're reusing the pavement, they're reusing all the columns, but they're still creating beauty, lasting beauty. They are actually a lot more advanced than our system right now. They are actually circular by nature. All the material are collected within literally meters. Living the current economy, I take, I consume, I dispose. But if you look at everything as a circular system, everything makes sense. The waste of one system is the energy of a next system. So they are constantly interrelated in these overlapping circles. That's what I mean by circular. Hello, nice to meet you, finally.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, he's the pioneer of environmental movement that some say can offer some solution to revolutionize the economy, known as circular economy. Architect, designer, and innovator, Arte Huang.
Hi, Priya. Thanks for inviting me.
So please tell me, what is circular economy?
Basically, right now, the current system is called a linear economy. It means you make something, you sell something, you use something, and you throw away something. That's it. But what we mean by circular or circularity economy is basically you're trying to keep everything in the loop. You don't throw anything away. There's no waste. And so you can reuse the resources for a long time. Basically, you're trying to mimic how nature is, where there's no waste.
I think of circularity as circulation. When I see a log, I don't see a rotting log. I see a fountain of life. You know, this log doesn't rot and decay into the ground. It actually, this log becomes this orchid. The materials in this log, they're becoming fungus, you know? And the mushroom, the materials in the mushroom, if a vole was to come over and eat that mushroom, those materials would become the vole. And then if a hawk or an owl were to swoop down right now and pick up that vole, those materials would become the owl. It's a circulation of materials. In nature, the circulation and reuse of resources is endless. Is it possible that we humans can do the same with our technical resources? I think we can. We simply need to rethink our make, use, throw away world so that it circulates resources too.
I actually see these sunglasses right here.
Yeah, so that is actually made from cigarette butts. The filter in the back of a cigarette that we throw away, you see on the ocean all the time, those are actually a very precious plastic called cellular acetate, which is hypoallergenic, so you don't get allergy from touching your skin. Reuse means you just keep using something for a long time, right? Refurbish means, oh, okay, sorry, it's a little bit broken here. Let's try to make it work again. Okay, so that means refurbish. Okay, recycle actually means it has no more use to you. Actually, it's about jumping applications, coming out with a new way of using this material. And upcycle means whatever product it was in the previous life, the upcycle actually even have a higher performance value than the previous life. This idea of reusing everything is not new. It has been around for human society and civilization forever. In the pre-World War II era, everything is recycled, refurbished. There's no such thing as going to waste. As we urbanize and population increase dramatically, that's when the single use becomes a huge problem. So if you can consider everything you buy is forever, and you should not create waste, you're not going to throw it out, then we are going somewhere.
So basically just like
our system of design, our system of economy, our system of consumption has to become zero waste. As simple as that. Literally mimicking nature. That's what circularity is.
Stop, put your pencil down, and rethink everything.
And here is some what would you call them, comic strips or cartoons from a newspaper. I forget which one it was, when my first book on Gaia was out. The university biologists went out of their way to badmouth Gaia. There were endless papers in the scientific journals of trying to disprove Gaia. I would hate to have to keep on trying to remember all of the criticisms there have been of it. They've been devastating. Maynard Smith even called it an evil religion. It set me thinking, I'll have to make a computer model of this. I wrote a model in BASIC, which is a simple language, and it worked straight away. It was always magical. I sent it in to the Royal Society, to their journal, the oldest scientific journal in the world. Nearly all of the peer reviewers rejected it as nonsense. But the president said, we need to hear this side of the story. And to my amazement, they published it. It takes time for big ideas to come across because people like to stick with what they know. But if we are to survive on this planet way into the future, we'd better believe it.
Recycling is really not working. All the single-use material that we throw away, in reality, there's no such thing as a way. It's all Western trash. Containers are actually filled with trash material labeled as recycled material. Most of our developed countries just ship the whole thing as trash directly into Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, etc. If you look at Gaia, Earth as a system, it is a bowl. It's a fish bowl, right? It's a tank. We're all living in this tank. Nothing goes away. You know, the stuff we throw away nothing goes away. It's all within the system. Polluting in China, in Vietnam, in Taiwan is the same as polluting in Europe. Eventually get to Europe.
We've been very leaky with our materials. You know, we've dissipated things all over the place. And the circular economy says everything is valuable and you want to recoup it, reincarnate into something else, a product, say, but recoup those bits as if they are the most precious thing in the world, because they are. Recouped and reincarnated. That's what life does.
Everything has a story. An artist can paint a painting that might only cost $1 to make, but it's selling for millions of dollars. It's about seeing something as valuable. This is one of my favorite projects. It's also a combination of many years of what we've been trying to develop, and sometimes successful, sometimes not successful, and we kind of put the successful pieces all in one place. Recycling is really not working, right? Why is it not working? Is because no one is generating the new desire for this recycled material. The house of trash is just a house. Everything in here should be 100% made from a previous life product.
These are what we've been able to transform mobile screens into, and you can see how this feels, the transformation from a screen of a telephone.
There's a beauty in transformations. And you also want to create the possibility for second life and the third life. Coffee lid, coffee cups, we use it for what, 5 minutes? We want to turn that into something of maybe 5 years, like a furniture. And after the furniture is used, maybe this is no longer what you desire for a sofa, or you simply got sick of that. We compress the chair again, like the one I'm sitting in, and we're then turning into an architecture building block.
You can see here, we have our bricks.
Then you turn the 5-year material then into a 25 years, 50-year material.
They have an interlocking capability.
All material should be done this way. All products should be made this way.
We're, as a species, good at problem solving. And yet the problems are really symptoms of a flawed system design.
And everything is made from those materials that we looked at, and it's quite interesting.
So the idea of system change is to create a system that doesn't generate the problems in the first place, rather than spending our time trying to solve and fix problems.
After 3.8 billion years of life on Earth, life has solved everything we're trying to solve in an incredibly sustainable way. Life has learned what works and what lasts, what's appropriate. You know, life's learned how to live gracefully on the Earth. In a million different strategies, I see them in total as nature's genius. Biomimicry is innovation inspired by nature. So it's the practice of anytime you design anything, saying what in the natural world has already solved what it is I'm trying to solve. You can imagine a solar manufacturer sitting down with a botanist who knows how photosynthesis works. Somebody who wants to make sustainable fiber, sitting down with somebody who knows how a spider spins its web You can imagine a shipbuilder wanting to sit with somebody who knows about fish or tuna or shark to know how to reduce drag in the shape of a hull. When you look at fireflies, there's bioluminescence. It's a chemical light. But what's really interesting is the abdomen of the firefly. If you look very closely, they have this tiled structure. When you put those tile structures on the bulb of an LED, you get 55% more light out of a single LED bulb. So life always is giving us these amazing ways to make what we already have even better. There's a really important one for human health that has to do with controlling bacteria. If you look at seaweed, there are thousands of different species of algae that live in oceans all over the world. You would expect them to be covered with bacteria and barnacles, but they're not. They're actually producing a chemical that keeps bacteria from communicating with each other, which is what they need to do if they're going to colonize the surface. When bacteria can't communicate, they simply don't land. Now you can mimic that chemical and use it as a cleaner, a liquid spray that will prevent bacteria or algae or even mold from settling. And because it's not killing bacteria, it's just stopping them from colonizing a surface, they don't develop an immunity to it. And that's why it's worked in nature for millions of years. It's a whole new way of dealing with bacteria. And if we can mimic nature on a small scale, why can't we do it big?
This is the first time something of this scale is being executed at this circularity level, from the way how we collect the material, all the way how we construct to mimic nature. We literally have a campaign to collect the material from all the Taipei citizens. We collected 1.5 million PET bottles within 2 weeks. And then we created this nice story-tall structure. It's important for us to have this type of project as a demonstration to show the potential of circularity at this scale. The ultimate form for us is biomimicry. So everything here is trying to construct without using glue. We use the material, we transform them into these self-interlocking blocks. They create these honeycomb panels, and these panels became the wall and the muscle of the structure. Everybody have these cute concept of micro scale, trying to mimic how nature works, but how do you do that in an economical, scalable way? And that's what this building is trying to demonstrate.
The world didn't used to eat cheap chicken.
Boys, get to plucking them chickens. They're gonna have chicken for dinner. Boss man says you can't have steak because the cows.
We benefit from remarkably inexpensive chicken now.
And we lost the old meal skinner. Boys, get to plucking them chickens.
But the chicken industry and all of us benefiting from cheap meat is destroying large farmlands, large landscapes, and I suspect most chicken farmers struggle to make a living. The poultry eat grains that are grown on massive farms using massive amounts of fertilizer and pesticides, which essentially destroys the soil. I began to think about solutions to the nutritional needs of human beings and how we can grow food in a way that doesn't destroy the planet. The essence of living systems is that they are regenerative. You know, a forest fire leaves the land barren and smoking, literally in cinders. But then magically, that forest will regenerate itself more healthy than it was prior to the fire. The key to the regenerative process is that it continually unfolds. I think of it almost like as an upward spiral, never-ending unfolding of fresh potential. I try to find projects that are at the cutting edge of this whole regenerative paradigm. And the one that I'm focused on right now, it's a beautiful kind of closed loop, cradle to cradle, model. It involves farm-raised tilapia. Tilapia are grass-eating fish. The feed input is grass. The waste from the tilapia is fed into freshwater shrimp. The shrimp are then harvested as a second crop. And the waste from the shrimp then go into where we can grow crustaceans. So think freshwater clams and oysters. But then the waste from that third tank is the fertilizer for a farm up on the roof that is growing tomatoes and basil. So now you've got fish, shrimp, crustaceans, tomatoes, and basil, all grown with the same grass-fed input, but then also heating the water in the greenhouse so that you don't have to add heat to the system when the water goes back into the tilapia tank. The world didn't used to eat cheap chicken. If we choose to eat grass-fed fish instead and grass-fed shrimp instead at a comparable cost, and that's safer and cleaner, it would create a massive demand to turn cornfields back into grasslands. And that would have a massive impact on stabilizing the climate. That's the promise I have for a regenerative economy, is that it's not just eliminating the bad stuff we all can see and are trying to reduce, but it's unlocking potential that most of us don't currently see.
With fashion, I think we have a problem. Now, fashion is one of the biggest polluter, also has huge amount of carbon footprint. One of the most damaging environmental industries in the world. We are all a contributor of this major problem.
Is a color, a loving is a wild dog. She's got the look. 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 What in the world can make a brown-eyed girl turn blue? And I go la 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 la.
My personal solution to fashion is to repair as much as possible. Most of my pants, after the third time I'm mending them together, the fabric just won't take it anymore. They just completely falls apart. It's only then the problems with how we make materials in the first place becomes clear. Most of the fashion industry fabric or fibers that's creating these fabric are either made from two sources. One is a natural source, farm source like cottons, like wool. The synthetic material, which are all the polyesters, nylons, polypropylene, or acrylics, they combine them in the fashion industry. One piece of clothes can have rayon, cottons, at the same time polyester, all within one mix. So it's impossible for you to separate these materials. You only need a tiny bit of different material in the mix, and it makes recycling impossible. Just one label in a t-shirt with different material or stitching, the whole thing will probably end up in landfill. With smart design, we could avoid creating landfill fabric in the first place. But a real breakthrough has already happened. A circular solution for one of the most mass-produced fabrics. 30 million pairs of jeans are sold every day, but they can be made with denim designed to be fully recyclable, to preserve resources and reduce waste. And they never need cause a problem as landfill, because they can dissolve in the ground in weeks, even on a compost heap at home.
The actual real world that we live in is this dynamic, really magical, 1 in a million, 1 in a trillion oddity that is this self-organizing, self-perpetuating, ever-evolving, ever-complexifying, amazing reality. And the only thing that's in conflict with that is the way we run our human economy. How can that possibly be?
Give it another go, and there's a crease for him to find his way into the end zone. After falling behind 23-0 last week.
It's sort of embedded in our culture that winning is what's rewarded.
The best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want.
Taken to an extreme, it gets unhealthy, and money becomes the measure, it becomes the scorecard of the game. There's never a concept of enough in the capitalist system. There's never an idea that, you know, you've grown as big as it makes sense to grow in a certain business. You know, if you look to the jungle, the king of the jungle is the lions, and the lions spend most of their day sitting around sleeping, when they could spend all day killing antelope if they wanted to. But if they killed all the antelope, then they wouldn't have dinner in the future. So they don't waste antelope, they just eat what they need. I had a wonderful dinner with Janine Benyus once. She explained how competition works in nature. She went on to explain that, you know, we have this entire misunderstanding of what Darwin really meant when he said survival of the fittest. That really means survival of the one that fits best, like a puzzle fitting together.
Think about the coral reef. There are these small coral polyps. They're an animal, and they're composed of a zooxanthellae. It's a photosynthesizing organism that lives within the coral. The zooxanthellae gets a place to be inside the coral, and it photosynthesizes and gives the coral its carbon. And together, they create something that can be seen from space. They create homes, protected homes, for 4,500 species. that, if not for the coral polyp partnership, literally would not be there. There's a generosity in the natural world. The fish are giving just by excreting. They eat, they excrete. The coral reef blooms because of that nitrogen. It's not too much nitrogen, but it's just the nitrogen that they need. The natural world's full of these symbiotic relationships where I have a certain skill, you have a certain skill, we combine those skills and we make the most of our habitat.
We definitely need to be more like nature, but working together is hard. It's a cultural paradigm shift that we are dealing with. Almost every industry, every facet of our economy need to see the connections.
What's the example? I want to know more. Elaborate.
So, for example, the waste of one company can turn to the resources of another company. And they are all interrelated. So there's a network of companies that's supplying their waste is someone else's energy resources or material resources for their next generation of products. But they are all semi-interconnected, so they create an ecosystem. What if we can make an ecosystem that links, say, the car and the fashion industries? We know that fashion is notorious for waste. But what if the waste could be something that the car industry pays good money for? Something that otherwise might get made from brand new materials, like insulation in car doors. The quick wins are for us just to show people that things work. But our real ambition is to have these big, long-term systematic impact. Got a project. I think we can use all our upcycled material we developed for the last 15 years to turn that into a hospital and for containment hospitals.
We've never done that before.
Of course. I think the concept. The hospital project is basically turn all the single-use waste that we can collect during this pandemic time. And we want to turn that into state-of-the-art, pandemic-ready hospital wards. This is how it should look when it's finished, but this is the one that's the most complex. This is the one that's going to ICU room. To design a system that click together, very quick to assemble within 24 hours to create a medical pod. And this is also the additional like water for dialysis machines. Circularity becomes super important during the pandemic time because the global trade shut down. The fact that you shut down, you have to use local material to produce the necessary infrastructure that's needed to help save lives. Most business people don't like to be here. They want to talk about circularity on concepts, but they don't know how to execute physically. To them, this is junk. This is literally circularity meets health and meets crazy time constraint. By end of this year, we're supposed to finish like 96 wards. Within these pods, they all have to fit together to directly clip, like just click, and then you don't have any joints. Almost every industry, almost every facet of our economy need to start having these system innovations to have circularity. One of the best transformations a business can make is to rethink what it is that they are actually selling. An MRI scanner is one of the most important and expensive machines in medicine. It can look right inside the human body. They are complicated, full of rare and valuable materials, and expensive and difficult to replace when they get outdated. So this scanner manufacturer has changed how they do business. They supply, maintain, and upgrade the machine so it can be used for as long as possible. When that's no longer an option, they take it back and refurbish to start a second life. And there's zero waste. Every part or material is reused and recycled. The business aims to flourish without making and selling more and more machines. Because the customer don't want machines, they simply want the best scan for their patients.
One of the smartest things businesses are already doing is switching from selling us stuff to selling us services. Imagine you never consume another fridge in your life, or a dishwasher, or a washing machine. Instead, you take out a contract to have one that'll always work. The company will maintain it and update it. And when you don't want it anymore, they'll come take it back, and then they'll reuse everything it's made of. That's a business model that could work for lots of things.
Imagine never needing the latest mobile phone or TV with all the new materials it takes to make it. Because the one you already own just got updated and now it's performing like a new one. In the circular economy, we get to be customers without having to be consumers.
Don't worry, we'll fix it for you.
We need to reimagine our place in the universe. The lessons from COVID are going to be ricocheting out for years to come. And understand there's going to be many other COVIDs coming, whether they're pandemics or climate change disasters. The point is that we're in a world that's not possible to predict what's going to happen. Where does your food come from and where does your water come from? Those are questions that I think suddenly will become front of mind, as opposed to, boy, I'd sure like another fancy watch or fancy car or, fancy vacation. It's taught us how fragile the system really is. We've designed our society around an economic system that values money. More money is good, less money is bad. There's no place for love, there's no place for beauty, there's no place for goodness in any economic model. We live as if we're separate from the planet and separate from each other. We even have a word, nature, as if nature is separate from humanity. So it's really the mindset, it's the way we think, the way we see the world, that is the heart of the matter. What's the future of capitalism? Think about it. It's the biggest corporations, it's the biggest governments, and it's a handful of billionaires who make capital investment decisions that matter to the fate of this planet. The lion sleeps most of the day and eats only what it needs, and that keeps the ecosystem in balance. I can imagine a day when we will see large multinational corporations, the biggest governments, and the billionaires working in service of the health of the whole.
If I were to write a letter to James Lovelock, I would probably say, "You're right, it is all alive. And thank you for seeing life at every scale. Allowing us to stand back and realize that those grand cycles, they come about because of getting all the small cycles right." And I would just thank him for hanging in there when his scientific objectivity was questioned. I know that the Earth is a living system, and we all know it now.
I'm constantly in awe of the natural world. You don't need money to get that joy, and yet it gives me much more fulfillment than buying stuff. I get that big corporations feel locked in this need for exponential growth of profit. I get that. What I think will happen is that people are going to evolve, and that the demand for the products these companies are currently selling us is going to go away. It's already happening. And then companies will have to do what they've always done. The best ones will adapt, and they'll innovate and find ways to solve the real problems facing humanity in the 21st century.
The hospital is finally finishing. It definitely shows that trash can save lives. We actually don't need new virgin resources. We literally can take post-consumer resources and we can transform that into the next generation of technology. It definitely makes me feel like this is going to change the world.
The evidence that our current human economy is not working, is not sustainable, is now overwhelming. We actually are at the moment of crisis, and so we need to make a fundamental decision about the direction we head. Well, what better model to use to rebuild around than the model of living systems and how they behave, which are the only systems that we know of that have sustained themselves for long periods of time. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. They are sustainable by the fact that they exist.
These organisms are building soil, are we? They're cleaning water, are we? They're cleaning air. They're creating exactly the conditions we all need to live. We've got to take our rightful place as living organisms on this planet.
Circularity is the only hope. This is the only way we can survive. Because that's the closest that we are mimicking how nature operates.
Stop, put your pencil down, and rethink everything.
Gradually, the opponents began to listen. Gaia became better known as Earth system science. It is applicable to all of the different systems, biological, economic, anything. I received a letter stating that I'd been awarded the Companion of Honor Award, and would I come to Buckingham Palace to receive it? It was a 10-minute audience I had with Her Majesty. It was quite pleasant.